This deaf woman's interpreter had been arrested. And Judge Caprio's reaction at the end of this video will absolutely shock you. The courtroom froze the moment the deaf woman signed, "Where is my interpreter?" That was when Judge Caprio learned the interpreter had been arrested the night before for interfering, after she insisted Marisol had Ada rights. Marisol Vega stood at the defense table. Her eyes swept the room, searching for anyone who could understand her. Confusion tightened her face. She signed again, faster, more urgently. But no one responded. No one understood. Judge Frank Caprio looked up from the bench. He didn't know sign language, but he could read panic in body language. He turned to the clerk. "Miss Reyes, where is the interpreter?" Miss Reyes flipped through her notes. Her voice trembled slightly. "Your Honor, the interpreter is marked as unavailable. The note says she's in custody." Caprio put his pen down slowly, the kind of slow that meant something was very, very wrong. "In custody," he repeated. "The interpreter who is legally required to help this woman understand these proceedings is in jail." Miss Reyes nodded. "Yes, Your Honor, she was arrested last night." Caprio removed his glasses, folded them once, and placed them on the bench with the precision of a man who had just discovered an injustice. "Why was she arrested?" Miss Reyes checked the screen. "Obstruction of a police officer." Silence swallowed the courtroom. Caprio leaned forward, his voice calm, controlled, but with steel underneath. "So the interpreter who was ensuring this defendant could communicate with law enforcement was arrested for ensuring this defendant could communicate with law enforcement." No one spoke. Marisol's hands moved again, asking questions no one could answer. Her fear was visible, her isolation complete. Caprio looked at her, then at the gallery, then at Officer D'Angelo, the bailiff. "Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from and subscribe to Order in the Court." Timestamp 9:45:12 a.m. Interpreter unavailable. Reason in custody. Miss Reyes stood, her voice formal but shaken. Case number 2025 CR 4417. State versus Marisol Vega. 4 counts. Failure to comply with lawful commands, resisting arrest, reckless driving, failure to appear for scheduled court hearing. Caprio lifted his hand. She stopped. He turned to Marisol, speaking slowly even though he knew she couldn't hear him. "Miss Vega, can you hear me?" Marisol watched his lips and shook her head. She signed again, carefully, precisely. Caprio faced the courtroom. "Does anyone here know American Sign Language?" Silence. He looked at the prosecutor. "Does your office have an interpreter?" The prosecutor hesitated. "Not immediately, Your Honor." Caprio's expression stayed calm, but his voice tightened. "We are not proceeding without equal communication. This is not optional." He turned back to the clerk. "Pull the file on the interpreter's arrest. I want to know exactly why Naomi Clark is in custody and why she was not brought here." Miss Reyes typed quickly. Interpreter Naomi Clark was detained at 8:47 p.m. last night during a traffic stop involving the defendant. Arresting officer Daniel Kim reports she refused multiple commands to step back. She was charged with obstruction. Caprio's jaw tensed. Step back while interpreting for a deaf woman who was being detained. Miss Reyes nodded. Jail log interpreter held overnight. Reason persistent demands. Caprio opened the file, read silently, then looked up. "Let me understand this. Miss Vega is profoundly deaf. She asked for an interpreter. An interpreter arrived. The interpreter tried to help, and the officer arrested the interpreter for doing her job." The prosecutor rose. "Your Honor, the officer's report states." "I don't care what the report states," Caprio said quietly. "I care what the law requires. and the law requires meaningful communication access for a deaf person during any interaction with law enforcement. That is not a courtesy. That is federal law. He turned to the bailiff. Bring Officer Kim to this courtroom, now. Marisol signed again, asking what was happening. No one could answer. The isolation tightened around her. Caprio looked at her softly. Miss Vega, I will make sure you understand everything that happens here. That is my promise. He turned back to Miss Reyes. Call the jail. I want Naomi Clark released immediately and brought here. I want her obstruction charge reviewed within the hour. And I want a full report explaining why a certified interpreter was arrested for interpreting. Miss Reyes picked up the phone. Caprio leaned back, reviewing the case file again. He read the custody logs. He read the jail transcripts, Naomi's words preserved in the system even as she sat in a cell. She had told officers Marisol needed ASL access. She explained Marisol couldn't understand verbal commands. She explained that Marisol was reaching for a laminated card reading, I am deaf, in English and Spanish. She asked them to wait. She asked them to let her interpret. She asked them to follow the law. They told her to stop interfering. One said her signing was making things harder. Another said she was causing a disturbance. A third warned she would be arrested if she didn't step back. She didn't step back. She kept signing. She kept interpreting. She kept fighting for Marisol's rights. So they arrested her. Meanwhile, Marisol spent the night alone in a holding cell, unable to communicate with anyone. She signed to the walls. She signed to the officers. She signed to the other detainees. No one understood. No one responded. She cried, signed, cried again. Paperwork excerpt. Interpreter detained. Reason, persistent demands. Here is your rewritten part 2 with the asterisk, same length asterisk, same tone asterisk, and same flow asterisk, but made asterisk clearer, smoother, and more gripping asterisk while keeping easy, emotional language. I kept all facts, beats, pacing, and structure intact. The courtroom door opened. Officer Daniel Kim walked in, uniform sharp, notebook in hand, his expression tight with tension. He stepped into the witness box. The clerk swore him in. Caprio's voice was steady. Officer Kim, tell the court what happened on the night of November 3rd. Kim opened his notebook. His tone was official, controlled. At approximately 8:21 p.m., I observed a vehicle traveling 48 in a 35. I initiated a stop. The vehicle pulled over after 2 blocks. I approached the driver's side, identified myself, and asked for license and registration. He flipped a page. The driver didn't respond. I repeated the request. Still nothing. It looked like she was ignoring me. She reached toward the glove compartment. I ordered her to stop and show her hands. She didn't comply. I opened the door and attempted to secure her. She pulled away. I called for backup. Caprio leaned forward, eyes steady. Did the driver say anything to you? No, Your Honor, she was silent. Did she make any gestures? Kim hesitated. She was moving her hands. Moving her hands, Caprio repeated. In what way? I'm not sure, like gestures, hand motions. Caprio paused. Did it occur to you that she might be using sign language? Kim's face reddened. Not at the time, Your Honor. Caprio stayed calm. What happened next? An interpreter arrived. She said she'd been called. She approached the vehicle and began making the same hand motions. I told her to step back. She refused. She said the driver was deaf and needed her. I told her I had to complete the stop first. She insisted I couldn't question the driver without her. She kept stepping forward. She was interfering. I arrested her for obstruction. The courtroom held its breath. Caprio spoke quietly, voice like a blade wrapped in velvet. Officer, if a person cannot hear your commands, Failure is not defiance. Kim stared at the floor. I didn't realize she was deaf until the interpreter told me. And when she told you? I told her to step back so I could finish the stop. Did you request an interpreter through official channels? No, Your Honor. I thought I could handle it by arresting the interpreter. Caprio didn't respond. The silence did the talking. Body cam timestamp, 7:18:04 p.m. Officer shouting. Marisol signing. Two worlds passing through each other like ghosts. Caprio turned to Miss Reyes. Are there any Ada-related documents in this file? She opened a folder. Yes, Your Honor. Miss Vega submitted an interpreter request form 2 months ago when she got a parking citation. It was sent to the clerk's office, the traffic division, and the prosecutor. It listed her interpreter's contact info and asked that all future interactions include ASL access. Caprio's jaw set. So the system knew. The system was warned, and the system ignored it. Miss Reyes continued reading. There are also 3 emails from the interpreter agency asking for confirmation an interpreter would be provided for any court or police interaction. None were answered. Caprio leaned back. None were answered. She turned another page. There's also a voicemail transcript from the jail supervisor to the interpreter agency at 11:03 p.m. It says, "We don't pay interpreters at night. She'll have to write notes." The temperature in the room dropped. Caprio's voice thinned, sharp and controlled. Rights are not something you get only during business hours. He looked at the prosecutor. Does your office have a position on this? The prosecutor stood. Your Honor, the department is reviewing procedures. Reviewing, Caprio cut in. A deaf woman was arrested for being deaf. An interpreter was arrested for interpreting, and the system is reviewing procedures. He leaned forward. If you believe accessibility is a right, not a favor, subscribe to order in the court. Ada summary line on the record. Interpreters must be provided before questioning. The door opened again. Naomi Clark entered, escorted by Officer D'Angelo. She looked exhausted, clothes wrinkled, but her posture was steady. A professional bruised but not bent. Caprio stood. For the first time he stood. Miss Clark, he said, on behalf of this court I apologize. What happened to you was wrong. What happened to Miss Vega was wrong, and I intend to make sure it never happens again. Naomi's eyes glimmered. She nodded. Caprio gestured to the stand. Please, I need you to interpret, and I need to hear what happened. Naomi took the stand. The clerk swore her in. She looked at Marisol and began signing. Marisol's entire face changed. Relief broke over her like light through a storm. Naomi interpreted. She's asking what is happening. She's asking if she's going to jail. She's asking why no one would talk to her. Caprio's voice softened. Tell her she is not going to jail. Tell her I will make sure she understands everything from this moment forward. Naomi signed. Marisol's shoulders sagged with relief. Caprio turned to Naomi. Miss Clark, tell the court what happened on November 3rd. Naomi's voice stayed steady. I received a call from a bystander who said a deaf woman was being stopped by police and couldn't communicate. I drove to the scene. When I arrived, Officer Kim was shouting at Miss Vega. She was signing that she was deaf. She was reaching for a card in her glove compartment that explains her disability. He thought she was reaching for a weapon. She paused, gathering herself. I approached. I identified myself as a certified ASL interpreter. I told him she was deaf and couldn't hear his commands. He told me to step back. I explained she needed an interpreter to understand what was happening. He said I was interfering. I said the ADA requires an interpreter. He told me if I didn't step back, I'd be arrested. I said I couldn't step back because she had no way to communicate without me. Her voice cracked. So he arrested me. Caprio's eyes shifted to Officer Kim. Is that accurate? Kim nodded, yes, Your Honor. And what did you say to Miss Clark when she told you about the Ada? Kim hesitated. I said her signing was making things harder. The room froze. 5 seconds. 7. 10. 12. That was how long it took for ignorance to echo through a courtroom. When Caprio finally spoke, his voice was lower, sharper. American Sign Language is not interference. It is communication. Timestamp: 10 hours, 13 minutes, 48 seconds a.m. Court acknowledges systemic failure. Caprio opened the file again, scanning quietly. Then he began. Here's what the evidence shows. Miss Vega is profoundly deaf. She submitted an ADA request form 2 months ago. The system ignored it. She was pulled over for a minor traffic violation. She could not hear the officer's commands. She attempted to communicate by signing and by reaching for an identification card. The officer misinterpreted her actions as non-compliance. An interpreter arrived to provide legally required access. The officer arrested the interpreter for providing that access. Miss Vega spent the night in custody without any means of communication. The jail refused to provide an interpreter because it was after hours. He closed the file. Every single one of those actions violated the Americans with Disabilities Act. Every single one violated Miss Vega's constitutional rights, and every single one is unacceptable. He looked at Marisol as Naomi interpreted. Miss Vega, all charges against you are dismissed. Your arrest record will be expunged. You will receive a formal apology from this court and from the Providence Police Department. You will be compensated for the interpreter services that should have been provided during your stop and detention. Marisol's hands moved. Naomi interpreted. She's asking if she did something wrong. Caprio's voice softened. Tell her no. Tell her the system failed her. And tell her I will make sure it doesn't fail anyone else. He turned to Officer Kim. Officer, you will complete a 40-hour ADA compliance training course. You will submit a written report on disability rights in law enforcement. And you will personally apologize to Miss Vega and Miss Clark. Kim nodded, yes, Your Honor. Caprio then faced the prosecutor. Your office will review Miss Clark's obstruction charge. I expect it dismissed within 24 hours. She will also receive compensation for her unlawful detention. He turned to Miss Reyes. This court will implement the following policies effective immediately. First, a 24-hour ASL interpreter hotline for all law enforcement interactions. Second, every Providence police officer will complete mandatory disability awareness training within 60 days. Third, a custody ADA compliance officer will be appointed to guarantee that detainees with disabilities receive proper accommodations. Fourth, every future ADA request form submitted to this court will be flagged and confirmed within 48 hours. ADA violation ledger, documented, corrected, codified. Caprio leaned forward. Disability is not defiance. Silence is not resistance. It may simply be a language you never learned. He paused. Miss Reyes, prepare a full report on this case. Send it to the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. I want them to know what happened here and what we're doing to fix it. Miss Reyes nodded. Yes, Your Honor. Caprio turned back to Naomi. Miss Clark, thank you for standing up for Miss Vega. You followed the law when others ignored it. That took courage and it cost you a night in jail. I'm sorry you went through that. This court is grateful for what you did. Naomi signed to Marisol. Marisol signed back quickly. Naomi's voice softened. She says thank you. She says she thought no one would ever listen. Caprio looked directly at Marisol. Tell her I listened. Tell her this court listened. And tell her that from this day forward the system will listen too. Should every police department require disability training? Tell us in the comments. Announcement memo excerpt. Effective immediately. All court notices will include aid or accommodation instructions in ASL video form. The hearing was almost finished, but Caprio lifted a hand. Miss Clark, I have one more request. Naomi looked up. I'd like you to teach me 2 signs. I want to say something to Miss Vega myself. The courtroom fell silent. Naomi stepped down, walked to the bench, and stood beside Caprio. She showed him 2 signs. Caprio practiced them once, twice, then nodded. He looked at Marisol. He raised his hands. He signed slowly, carefully. I'm sorry. Marisol's eyes filled with tears. He signed again. Thank you. Marisol signed back. She placed one hand over her heart and bowed her head slightly. Naomi whispered, She says you gave her voice back. Caprio shook his head gently. No, she always had a voice. We simply weren't listening. Justice spoke that day in silence. Caprio looked toward the gallery. If you believe justice must be accessible to everyone, subscribe to Order in the Court. 3 weeks later, the Providence Police Department launched a full disability rights training program. Every officer completed it. Officer Kim was among the first graduates. His final essay was titled, The Language I Didn't Know. The new 24-hour ASL interpreter hotline received 32 calls in its first month. 32 people who might have been arrested for not complying were finally given the communication access they needed. Naomi Clark's obstruction charge was dismissed with prejudice. She received an official apology and full compensation for her detention and lost wages. Marisol Vega's arrest record was completely expunged. She received a personal apology from the police chief and a phone call from the mayor, thanking her for exposing a gap in the system no one had fixed for years. The court's ADA request forms were redesigned. They now existed in ASL video format, large print, Braille, 15 written languages. Every submitted form triggered an automatic confirmation and a follow-up call. The Department of Justice reviewed Caprio's report and adopted it as a model for municipal ADA compliance across the country. Judge Caprio kept a small handwritten card on his desk. It said, Silence is not resistance. It may be a language you never learned. And behind his bench, visible to everyone who walked into the courtroom, hung a framed sign in American Sign Language. Justice for all and for everyone. This dramatization is for storytelling and educational purposes only, not legal advice or real case reporting.